the evening of May 3, 2007, at approximately 7:32 in the evening, a phone registered to a man who would not become a suspect for another 13 years began a 30-minute call. The call connected to the telecommunications mast belonging to the Ocean Club Resort Complex in Praia da Luz, Portugal. The mast that served the same holiday apartments from which a British child would vanish less than 3 hours later. That phone call, the call that German prosecutors say is one of the central pieces of evidence placing their prime suspect in the vicinity of the crime that night, was made from a device registered to, and investigators believe used by, Christian Brueckner. Brueckner has always denied having anything to do with Madeleine McCann's disappearance. He has denied it consistently since being named as a suspect. He denied it in letters from prison. He denied it in communications with journalists. He has never cooperated with formal police questioning, not from German investigators, not from British investigators, and most significantly, just days before his release from a German prison in September 2025, he declined a formal request from the London Metropolitan Police to be interviewed about his movements on the night Madeleine vanished. That refusal is not a statement of guilt. Under German law, suspects are not required to testify or respond to charges. Brueckner exercised a legal right that every person accused of a crime is entitled to exercise. He chose to remain silent. But here is what his silence means for this investigation. The alibi he has claimed, the explanation he provided through channels other than formal police questioning, has never been fully tested, never subjected to the kind of rigorous cross-examination that would either verify it or expose it, never evaluated against the totality of the evidence that investigators in 3 countries have spent 18 years assembling, never challenged in a formal legal setting where his answers would be on the record and where inconsistencies would have legal consequences. That untested alibi is the subject of this video. What Brueckner claims happened on the night Madeleine McCann disappeared, what the phone evidence shows about where he was, what investigators found when they tried to locate the woman he says he was with, what the gaps are between his claimed whereabouts and the documented evidence, and why, 18 years after a child vanished from a ground-floor apartment in the Algarve, the man at the center of the investigation has never been required to account for himself under oath. This case went cold in one sense and has never gone cold in another. Formally, it remains open. 3 police forces, British, German, and Portuguese, continue to investigate. In June 2025, German and Portuguese police conducted a new search of scrubland and abandoned buildings between Praia da Luz and the cottage where Brueckner lived at the time of the disappearance. They used heavy machinery and ground-penetrating radar. They collected items for testing, and in September 2025, after serving a 7-year sentence for the rape of a 72-year-old American woman in the same area of Portugal, Brueckner walked out of Zainde prison with an electronic ankle tag, no passport, and the distinction of being the only named suspect in the most heavily reported missing person case in modern history, still uncharged, still maintaining his innocence, and still having never answered the questions that investigators say could either clear him or condemn him. Before we get into the details of the alibi, drop your location in the comments right now. Where are you watching from? The Madeleine McCann case crossed every border, every language, every culture. It became a global conversation in 2007, and it has never fully stopped being one. I want to see how many of you have followed this case since the beginning and how many are discovering it for the first time. Subscribe to Cold Case right now. Hit that button, activate the notification bell, and smash the like. We covered the DNA evidence in this case in a previous video. The 2007 forensic failures, what modern probabilistic genotyping could do with the original samples, and why the evidence that was inconclusive in 2007 might be readable today. This video focuses on something different, the alibi, the specific claim Brueckner has made about where he was and what he was doing that night, and why that claim has never been fully tested against the evidence. Now let's start with the night itself and what investigators know about it. On the evening of May 3, 2007, Madeleine McCann disappeared from apartment 5A of the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz. She had been left sleeping in the apartment with her younger twin siblings, while her parents Kate and Jerry McCann dined with friends at a tapas restaurant approximately 50 meters away. The parents and their group checked on the children intermittently throughout the evening. At approximately 10 p.m., Kate McCann found that Madeleine was gone. The investigation that followed became one of the most extensive and expensive in British history. Operation Grange, the Metropolitan Police investigation, has cost more than £13 million over more than a decade of active inquiry. British, German, and Portuguese police have collectively investigated thousands of leads, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, and conducted multiple physical searches of areas in Portugal associated with the case. For the first 13 years, no named suspect emerged who investigators believed was primarily responsible for Madeleine's disappearance. Then, in June 2020, German prosecutors made a public announcement that changed the investigation fundamentally. They had a suspect, his name was Christian Brueckner, and they said they had concrete evidence that he was responsible for what happened to Madeleine. Who is Christian Brueckner? At the time of Madeleine's disappearance, he was living in a borrowed VW camper van in the Algarve region of southern Portugal. He had been in the area for years, working odd jobs, burglarizing hotel rooms and holiday apartments, and accumulating a criminal record that included convictions for child sexual abuse, drug trafficking, and theft. He had first been arrested at 15 for theft and had maintained a pattern of serious criminal offending throughout his adult life. In 2019, he was convicted of the 2005 rape of a 72-year-old American woman in Praia da Luz, the same resort area from which Madeleine disappeared, and began serving a 7-year prison sentence. He was the kind of person who had spent years operating in the area, knew its geography intimately, and had a documented history of targeting vulnerable people in holiday accommodation. German investigators, digging through Brueckner's history after a tip was received in 2017, found something that made him a compelling suspect. Phone records showed that a device registered to him had connected to the telecommunications mast, serving the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz at 7:32 p.m. on May 3, 2007, initiating a 30-minute call that lasted until approximately 8:02 p.m. Madeleine McCann disappeared sometime around 10 p.m. that same night. Let me break down what this phone evidence means and what it does not mean, because both matter. The cell tower data places Brueckner's phone, or at minimum, the phone registered to him, in the vicinity of the Ocean Club on the evening Madeleine disappeared, not at the exact location. Cell tower triangulation is not GPS precision. German prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters himself acknowledged in a documentary interview that the phone call could have been made within a 35-kilometer radius of the Praia da Luz mast. That radius is significant. It is large enough that the phone could have been somewhere in the general area without being directly outside the McCann apartment. Wolters also acknowledged that there is always the possibility that someone else was using the phone, that having a call connected to a mast associated with Brueckner does not definitively place Brueckner himself at that precise location. But here is what investigators say they have beyond the cell tower data. They have a witness who confirmed they saw Brueckner using that specific phone number, though not on May 3rd itself. They have Brueckner's own behavior the morning after Madeleine disappeared. He transferred his Jaguar into someone else's name the very next day. That transfer, coming immediately after the night Madeleine vanished, and before any public awareness that a suspect might be sought, is the kind of behavior that investigators call consciousness of guilt, though it can also have innocent explanations. They have the testimony of former associates. A man identified as Helge Busching, who described himself as a former associate rather than a friend of Brueckner's, gave a television interview in September 2025 stating he was 100% sure that Brueckner was involved in Madeleine's disappearance. He said that at a festival in Spain in 2008, a year after Madeleine vanished, he told Brueckner he didn't understand how anyone could take a child from a hotel. And Brueckner's response, Busching said, was, "She was not screaming." 3 words. 3 words that Busching said he could not explain away as anything other than knowledge that could only come from someone who was there. Brueckner has dismissed Busching's credibility entirely, calling his account something not even worthy of comment. The German court that acquitted Brueckner of unrelated charges in October 2024 specifically noted that some of the prosecution's witnesses, including Busching, were found to have reliability issues. That is a documented judicial finding about the quality of that testimony. And then there is a former cellmate, Laurențiu Codin, a Romanian national who shared a cell with Brueckner in 2020, told a German regional court that Brueckner had described a crime with circumstances matching Madeleine's disappearance. Codin quoted Brueckner as saying there was an open window somewhere, that he had entered a flat looking for money, found no money but found a child, took the child, and that 2 hours later the place was surrounded by police and dogs. The words, "There was an open window, found no money but found a child, police and dogs surrounded the area," match documented aspects of the McCann case in ways that would be difficult to attribute to coincidence if the account is accurate. The apartment window, the evidence of entry, the police response. Brueckner has denied all of this. Every account, every attribution, every piece of testimony that connects him to May 3rd, 2007. Quick question before we continue. What time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments. Because I want to know how many of you have followed the evolution of this investigation over the years. From the original 2007 search, through the Portuguese investigation and the McCann parents being treated as suspects, through Operation Grange, through the 2020 announcement of Brueckner as the prime suspect, through the June 2025 search and his September 2025 release, and how many are coming to this case fresh. Now let's talk about the alibi itself, because this is the core of what this video is about. In communications with the British investigative journalist Mark Williams-Thomas, who hosted a documentary about the case, Brueckner claimed that on the night Madeleine disappeared, he was having sex in his camper van with a young German woman. He was not in Praia da Luz at the time of the disappearance, he claimed. He was elsewhere. He was with someone. And that person could provide the alibi that would eliminate him as a suspect. When Williams-Thomas investigated this claim, what he found was striking in its ambiguity. He located not the woman herself, but the woman's husband. The husband confirmed that the woman had been on holiday in Portugal at the time in question, but the husband said the woman could not be sure of the exact details because it was so long ago. The alibi witness herself, the person whose account could potentially clear Brueckner, was not interviewed directly. She was not interviewed by Williams-Thomas in the documentary. She has not, as far as the public record shows, given formal testimony to police investigators about where she was and who she was with on the night of May 3rd, 2007. German prosecutor Walters, asked about this alibi, was direct. He said investigators had checked all of Brueckner's former girlfriends. None of them could provide a clear testimony for the night in question. He said the supposed alibi, the one featured in the Williams-Thomas documentary, did not trouble the investigation at all. He called the claim speculations and nothing new. A source close to the German investigation told journalists that Brueckner's reluctance to formally present his alibi was deeply frustrating to investigators. They characterized it as mind games. If Brueckner had a genuine alibi, a real, verifiable account of where he was, the logical thing to do would be to provide it immediately upon becoming a suspect, to name the woman, to point investigators toward the evidence that could clear him. The fact that he has not done this, that his alibi has been communicated only through selective channels, never formally presented in a legal setting where it could be evaluated and either verified or refuted, is something investigators have noted repeatedly. But here's the complication that makes this case genuinely difficult, and that explains in part why it has taken 18 years without charges. Under German law, the standard for bringing charges is different from the standard in the United Kingdom or the United States. Mark Stevens, a consultant at the British legal firm Howard Kennedy, described this difference clearly when Brueckner was released from prison. In the UK and the US, he explained, you need to believe there is better than a 50% chance of a successful prosecution before charges are brought. Circumstantial evidence can be used. The law recognizes that you will not always have key evidence, but in Germany the standard is higher. The evidence must be sufficient to make a guilty verdict likely. Circumstantial and inferential evidence is not admissible in the same way. German prosecutor Walters himself, in an interview in 2025, said the evidence against Brueckner in the McCann case is not strong enough to make a guilty verdict likely. He called Brueckner not just the #1 suspect, but the only suspect. He said they have evidence linking him to the disappearance. But that evidence, as of the time he spoke, had not crossed the threshold required to bring formal charges under German law. That threshold gap is precisely why the alibi matters so much. In an environment where the circumstantial evidence is compelling but not legally sufficient, a verifiable alibi could close the case in one direction, clearing Brueckner conclusively. And an alibi that falls apart under examination could, in combination with the existing evidence, push the case toward the charge threshold. Neither has happened, because the alibi has never been formally presented, never formally tested, and Brueckner himself has declined every formal opportunity to be questioned about it. His refusal to speak with Metropolitan Police investigators just before his September 2025 release was described by British authorities as a setback. His refusal means they could not push him about what CBS News described as inconsistencies in his alibis, or confront him directly with witness statements gathered over 18 years of investigation. The conditional plural, alibis, is significant. The suggestion that there are multiple claimed accounts that contain inconsistencies adds a layer to the picture beyond the single camper van claim. If you're finding this analysis valuable, if this is giving you a clearer picture of why the case has remained unresolved despite 18 years of investigation, hit the like button right now and leave a comment telling me what you think the most significant unresolved question in this case is. The alibi question, the phone evidence question, the German legal threshold question, the physical evidence question from the DNA. Now let's talk about what has changed in this investigation since Brueckner's release. Because the case in 2026 looks different from the case in 2020, and understanding those differences matters. Between June 3rd and June 5th, 2025, while Brueckner was still in prison, German and Portuguese police conducted a new physical search of scrubland and abandoned buildings between Praia da Luz and the cottage where Brueckner had been living at the time of Madeleine's disappearance. The search used heavy machinery, JCBs, and ground-penetrating radar capable of scanning to depths of 15 feet. The area included properties with wells and ditches. Police collected items for testing, but did not announce findings that indicated a major discovery. The search concluded after 3 days. The significance of that search is not what was found, but what it represents. Investigators do not commit those resources. Multiple agencies, heavy equipment, ground-penetrating radar, 3 days of active searching, unless they have specific reason to believe the relevant area has not been fully examined. That search, conducted 18 years after Madeleine vanished, suggests that investigative leads about what may have happened to her in the area around Praia da Luz remain active. In September 2025, when Brueckner walked out of Zainde prison, he was fitted with an electronic ankle tag and required to surrender his passport. These conditions, imposed as part of his release terms, mean he cannot leave Germany without authorization and that his movements are monitored. The electronic tag does not prevent him from refusing to speak with investigators. It does not compel him to answer questions, but it places a surveillance framework around someone who, the moment he was released, became a free man with no current criminal sentence to serve and no pending charges in the McCann case. The electronic tag and passport surrender are, in some ways, the physical embodiment of the investigative limbo this case occupies. Enough concern to monitor, not enough evidence to charge. A suspect who is free but watched, silent but not cleared. In an extraordinary letter that Brueckner wrote from prison and that was published online, he laid out what he called the decisive questions that could never be answered. He asked rhetorically, was I or my vehicle clearly seen near the crime scene on the night of the crime? Is there DNA evidence of me at the crime scene? Are there DNA traces of the missing person in my vehicle? Are there other traces or DNA carriers in my possession? Photos? And not to forget, is there a body? And then he answered each of his own questions. All no. That letter is remarkable for several reasons. First, because it reads as a preemptive legal argument, a statement of the evidentiary gaps that would prevent prosecution, written by the suspect himself. Second, because it makes no mention of the alibi. Someone with a genuine alibi, someone who was provably elsewhere with a verifiable witness, would typically lead with that exculpatory claim, not with a catalog of absent forensic evidence. Third, because the framing suggests that Brueckner has studied the legal requirements for prosecution and is confident that the existing evidence does not meet them. That confidence may or may not be warranted. The investigation is active. The items collected in the June 2025 search are being tested. Modern DNA technology, including touch DNA analysis of the kind that can extract profiles from surfaces handled years ago, is more powerful than anything available in 2007. And genetic genealogy, the technique that identified the Golden State Killer in 2018, can work from partial profiles to identify individuals through their family trees. If Madeleine's remains are ever located, whether in the area searched in June 2025 or elsewhere, the forensic examination of those remains and their immediate environment could produce exactly the kind of direct physical evidence that Brueckner correctly identified as currently absent. Before we move to the final accounting, I want to raise a question that goes beyond Brueckner specifically. A question about how investigations like this one function when the suspect has exercised their right to silence for years and the evidence has remained just below the threshold for prosecution. The structural problem with the alibi question is this. The alibi was never formally tested because Brueckner never formally presented it. He communicated elements of it through a documentary filmmaker. He mentioned it in letters. He never walked into an interview room, swore to tell the truth, and said, "I was with this specific person, at this specific location, doing this specific thing, and you can verify it with this evidence." He never gave investigators the names, dates, and corroborating evidence that a verified alibi would require, and German law did not compel him to. German prosecutor Wolter said bluntly that investigators checked all of Brueckner's former girlfriends, and none could provide a clear testimony for the night in question. That is not a statement that the alibi was proven false. It is a statement that it was not verifiable. The woman Brueckner mentioned was not available to confirm his account in a way that investigators could use. Whether that is because the alibi is fabricated, because the woman genuinely cannot remember the details of a night 18 years ago, or because she has reasons not to come forward, the record does not establish. What the record does establish is that Brueckner had every opportunity to formally present a verifiable alibi during the years he spent in German prison while knowing he was a named suspect, during the October 2024 trial on unrelated charges where he remained silent in the days before his September 2025 release, when British police formally requested an interview and did not do so. Madeleine McCann was a British child who disappeared from a Portuguese holiday resort in 2007. She was there with her family. She was taken from a place that was supposed to be safe. Her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, have spent nearly 2 decades maintaining a campaign to find answers. On every anniversary, they have put out statements saying their determination to leave no stone unturned remains unwavering. Jerry McCann has said that whatever the outcome, Madeleine will always be their daughter, that the uncertainty creates a weakness that only answers can address. Operation Grange remains funded and active. In 2025, ministers approved a further £108,000 to continue the inquiry through the 2025-26 financial year. The investigation has cost more than £13 million over its lifetime. 3 police forces continue to work it. The items from the June 2025 search are being tested. Christian Brueckner is free. He is wearing an ankle tag. He is moving between motels and homeless shelters in Germany, living on social welfare payments, unable to leave the country. He has never been charged with anything related to Madeleine McCann. He has denied involvement in her disappearance consistently and completely. He has exercised his legal right to silence in every formal context where that silence was available to him. And the alibi that he claims would clear him, the account of where he was and who he was with on the night of May 3, 2007, has never been formally presented, formally tested, formally verified, or formally refuted. It exists in fragments, in documentary communications, in a letter from prison, in a 30-minute phone call to a number registered to a man named Diogo Silva that connected to a cell tower serving the resort from which a child vanished. The alibi may be real. The woman may exist and may remember the night clearly. Brueckner may be innocent of this specific crime while having committed many other serious offenses. That is genuinely possible. German law, with its higher evidentiary threshold, may be protecting someone from being charged with a crime he did not commit, or the alibi may not hold up. The woman may not be able to provide the specific, time-stamped account that would place Brueckner definitively elsewhere. And if she cannot, the phone evidence, the car transfer, the words attributed to him by 2 separate sources about the specifics of what happened that night, the pattern of behavior across years in the same area, all of it remains pointing in a direction that investigators in 3 countries have never been able to stop looking at. After 18 years, the answer to what happened to Madeleine McCann is still out there. Whether it is in the ground somewhere between Praia da Luz and the Arad Dam, in the laboratory results from items collected in June 2025, in the memory of a woman who may or may not be able to recall the details of a single night in Portugal 18 years ago, or in the silence of a man who knows more than he has ever been required to say. Hit the like button. Subscribe to Cold Case. The investigation into Madeleine McCann's disappearance is active. The items from the June 2025 search are being analyzed. Christian Brueckner is free but monitored. And the question that has haunted this case since 2007, where is Madeleine and who is responsible, remains unanswered. When that changes, we will be here to explain what it means. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Do you believe the phone evidence is sufficient to establish Brueckner's presence at the scene? Do you think the alibi claim has any credibility? And what do you think modern DNA technology might find that could finally resolve this case? Share this video with anyone who has followed the McCann case and deserves a complete breakdown of the alibi question, what it claims, what the evidence shows, and why it has remained untested for 18 years. Madeleine McCann deserved to grow up. She deserved to be safe in the place where her family had taken her for a holiday. She deserved to come home. The people responsible for finding out what happened to her have not stopped looking, and neither have the millions of people around the world who have never stopped caring about what happened on the night of May 3, 2007, in a small resort town on the southern coast of Portugal. The alibi has never been fully tested. The investigation is still running, and the answer is still out there somewhere. After 18 years, it is time it was found. There is one more dimension of this case that deserves direct attention before we close. Something that speaks to why the alibi question is inseparable from the broader structural challenge of this investigation. In the 18 years since Madeleine disappeared, 3 separate police forces have been working different aspects of the same case. The London Metropolitan Police, through Operation Grange, focused on the British angle and funded by the British government. The German investigators in Braunschweig, led for years by prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters, who have named Brueckner as their sole suspect, and are working within the German legal system's specific evidentiary requirements. And the Portuguese Polícia Judiciária, who conducted the original investigation and have formally given Brueckner arguido status, meaning he is more than a witness in the Portuguese investigation, though not yet formally charged. 3 jurisdictions, 3 sets of legal requirements, 3 separate chains of evidence, and at the center, a suspect who has never been legally compelled to account for himself under any of them. The German system's higher threshold for charges has effectively created a situation where investigators are publicly certain of their suspect and legally unable to prosecute. Wolters said in 2025 that Brueckner is not just the #1 suspect, but the only suspect. He said they have evidence linking Brueckner to the disappearance. But that evidence is not strong enough by German legal standards to make a guilty verdict likely. In the UK or the US, as legal analyst Mark Stevens noted, the same evidence might have been sufficient to bring charges years ago. The circumstantial weight, the phone near the scene, the car transfer the next morning, the attributed statements, the pattern of offending in the same area, might have been enough, under a different legal standard, to force the alibi question into a formal courtroom, to put Brueckner on a stand, under oath, and require him to say, "Here is where I was, here is who I was with, here is what I was doing," and to then subject that account to the cross-examination and forensic verification that would either confirm or destroy it. That has never happened. And it may never happen unless the June 2025 search, or some future investigative development, produces the kind of direct physical evidence that Brueckner's letter from prison identified as absent. Forensic evidence at the scene, biological material linking him to the case, evidence that could make a German conviction not just possible but likely. Or unless the woman Brueckner has cited comes forward, gives a formal statement, provides the specific, time-stamped, verifiable account of where she was and who she was with on the night of May 3, 2007. And investigators can either confirm that account against the phone records and available evidence, or find that it does not hold up. Neither of those things has happened in 18 years. The case is not cold. It has never gone cold. The searches continue, the testing continues, the funding continues, and the man at the center of it is free, monitored, silent, and certain that the decisive questions cannot be answered. He may be right, or the evidence that answers them may be in a lab right now, emerging from items collected from the ground near his former home in June 2025. After 18 years, this is where we are. The alibi untested, the evidence insufficient, the investigation ongoing, and a family that has never stopped looking for answers about what happened to their daughter on a May evening in Portugal. Subscribe to Cold Case. When this case moves, when the lab results come back, when the legal situation in Germany changes, when the alibi question is finally forced into a formal setting, we will be here. Because this case has been waiting 18 years for its final chapter, and that chapter has not yet been written.